Hello, YouTube. Many of you were here for the first time with one of my previous videos on the action changes, primarily the action changes and the new barrel option for the Ruger 1022. I talked about the polymer stock a little bit, and in reading some of the comments, some people liked the stainless but hated the polymer stock. Totally understand that. We'll take a look at the specific changes of the polymer stock before we move on. But I've got a change that was, again, suggested in the comments, and I started to think about it. I'm like, you know what? I could do that. So we're going to take a look at doing that. But first, let's take a look. You saw this before without the stock. This is the Ruger 1022 model 32004. It is a polymer stock with a stainless 16.4 inch threaded barrel with thread protector and sights. And I talked about the changes that were made that seemed to be and still seem to be good upgrades. Things that were in the secondary market for a while, but Ruger's now making them factory, and I think they're good changes. If we look, one of the big changes, and probably one of the easiest changes for Ruger, was the auto bolt release, where you have the bolt back and you push the lever and it's held. Previously, for decades, to get the bolt to release, you couldn't just pull it back and let it go. You had to pull it back and let it go while you were maneuvering the holdback lever. That is not necessary anymore. All you have to do is pull the bolt back a little bit and let it go. And that simple change is a big quality of life difference. As we're looking at this view, we see that there are scope mount holes already in the receiver. It does come with the most recent version of Ruger's mounting rails that have the combination weaver and pick rail. So it goes right on there, depending on what you want for optics, if you want to use something other than the sights that are on there. Now let's take a look at the stock. There are some changes to the stock. We've got an updated texture profile or shape in both the grip and forend area. We got a little Ruger embossed in the stock. Just minor polymer changes there. One of the biggest changes was that we have a couple M-lock sections here, along with we still have the front and rear sling mounts. While we're at this view, we still have the extremely hollow butt end of the stock. Other than that, the other big change that I like is, along with the extended magazine release lever here to pop the magazine out, we got notches cut on either side of the stock right around the magazine, which is nice because if you hit the magazine release and the magazine doesn't drop, instead of having to fiddle with it, you can just use your fingers and grab the magazine and take it out. Again, something really simple, a really simple quality of life upgrade that Ruger has made. One of the other things, we've got the bolt that holds the action to the stock has been changed. I don't know when they made this change. It's first one I've seen. From a slotted screw to a hex bolt. And the nice thing about that is the hex bolt is 5/32, the same size as the barrel clamp. So those are the changes. And let's pop the action out of the stock, because we're going to ditch this polymer stock. And again, it's simple. Make sure the safety's in the middle so it pops out, and it is a quick tilt and slide and the polymer stock is out of here. So now we've got the action. Some of the other comments, the bolt stop is still a metal bolt stop. There is no silicone or soft bolt covering to cushion the bolt coming back, which is, again, another quick and easy aftermarket change that is out there that would be easy for the factory to implement. I don't know if there's a reason for them not doing that. I'm sure there probably is. But anyway, we've taken the barrel out of a number of these receivers, and everyone has been as tight as I mentioned in the previous video. So again, I don't know that that's a bad thing, but it's definitely there. If you're looking to disassemble one of these, the receiver probably is going to need to be heated up a little bit just to give it some space to let go of the barrel. But what are we going to do with it? We are going to turn this into the Ruger 1022 that Ruger should be making right now, and we're going to do that by putting it in the walnut stock that I showed you last video. Let's do that real quick here. One thing we may go back to, I should have pointed out, was the back of the receiver does not sit very well in the new polymer stock. But nice snug fit there. Let's get this tightened in a bit. Now this stock I have been and am in the middle of the final refinishing. When I made the previous video, you saw that it had the factory butt plate and the sling swivels. Those aren't on right now because I have been doing some more work to finally finish this. But somebody in the comments had said something about having a stainless 1022 in a walnut stock, and I thought, wait a second, that's a good idea. And I absolutely love the way this is turning out. If you look, every angle looks nice. I've always liked the flats that they have in the stock on either side of the barrel. It gives a very nice look and reflection, and especially the old Sporter stock, which this is. Again, this is a Sporter stock from the late 70s or early 80s, and it has some heft to it. It is solid. It feels good, and with the modern action and the changes that they made, it's made this a really attractive gun. And what I decided to do was to go for a complete polished heirloom type finish, where when I get done, it's going to be like a mirror. And it's close now. Most people are going to look at it and say that it's good. This hasn't been polished, so it would polish and have a greater gloss than this right now. But there are some things that we can do to make it glossier, and mo glossy, mo better. And I am going to spend the rest of the video going through some steps on how I get from the state that it's in now to finished. And that's going to entail some wet sanding and another coat of the finish that I use, and we will see what happens from there. So in general, this is absolutely a gun that Ruger should be making factory right now. The walnut stock is going to be expensive. It is something that I think would sell, especially in low volumes, if you had a custom hand-finished polished walnut stock with the action having the shorter 16.4-inch barrel, along with all of the other factory upgrades. I think that'd be a great thing to see on the market, but since it's not on the market, let's go ahead and make it ourselves. And I'm going to pop the action out of the stock, and we're going to get to taking some sanding stuff to this nice polished stock. Again, it comes out so easy, just to pop up and pull out, and we will set the stock down here, and I will set the action aside. And I have about 18, 19 coats of the finish that I use on this. I'm going to take that bolt out so that it doesn't keep rattling on me. Even though the bolt will go back in when I hang it to dry, but we don't talk about that right now. I don't know how much the camera is going to show, but while it is very glossy, some good reflective depth to it. I don't know how to get my hand reflected in the camera position. Maybe a little bit there. I don't know. Anyway, looks like it's done and finished. And if you would polish this out, it would look spectacular. But as we're going to see with a little bit of wet sanding, it is not dead smooth yet. There is still some grain showing through, and the more of the grain that we can get filled and leveled, the better the reflection is. And what we're going to do with that is use some, at this point, we're at 1500 grit. This is just straight wet dry sandpaper, 1500 grit. And before that, one of the things that I really like to use that I found recently is these sanding sticks. Get them from Temu. They cost nothing. I think it's, what, $6 for a set of them. They start out at 600. They're 600, 800, 1,000. I think 1,200 and then 1,500. I usually start out for this job, for doing stocks, I start at about 1,000 once I get a few coats of finish on it. And what it does is, by using this instead of just sandpaper, it allows you to get some really flat sections. And let's see that now by just spraying some water on the stock. And actually we'll spray some water on the sanding stick too. And the method is to go with the grain, and that is almost all the time when finishing or refinishing a stock. There are times that I will go in a random circular pattern, and that is typically later in the refinishing, close to where we are now, so that some of the grain areas get filled or get sanded more directly. And you can see now with just a little bit of wet sanding, you can start to see some dulled areas. And that's what we're looking for, only we want to see everything dulled. And this is an interesting project in that as you're doing it, the goal goes from having everything dull, where anything glossy is a defect, to having everything polished, where anything dull is a defect. And you go through that pattern back and forth over and over and over again. And see, I'm doing a little circular as I go through here, just because I know there are some low spots that I want to hit. And let's see what we do with that. All right, we're getting closer. you can see that we're starting to have larger flat areas. And the only thing left to do is keep doing what we're doing. And I'm going to spray off the stick as well. You always want to keep everything wet and clean, because any grit will really eat into the finish right now, and that will just cause you more work in getting it finally done. So this is the process, and I'm going to keep doing this until I'm happy with where we're at. If you look at this section through here, it's pretty good. If you look really closely, you can see that even in that section that I said that's pretty good, there are some grain areas showing, and more coats, more sanding, we will get that filled and end up with a glass-like finish, hopefully, and we will see. So I'm going to try to do some type of speed up shot with this as I go through, and we will take a look at the next step or talk about the next step when I get there. Okay, as I get to this point, I start thinking about how the final finish is going to look. And I still have to bring in the sandpaper and do some sanding by hand for all of the curvy sections and the flat sections as well. But if you look, I had just said that I have to go until the area is all flat. But as I'm looking at this, I'm really close to the final level that I want it at. I just have some grain to fill with a few more coats. So I'm going to stop with the stick right now, and I'm going to just give it a quick hand sand before I switch to putting another coat of the finish on. Now the finish I use is something that goes on in, like I said, a number of coats. So we've got about 18, 19 coats. This will probably be about 24, 25 when I get done. I don't sand between every coat. I sand between about every 3 coats. So I will sand this, give it about 3 coats, and sand again another day. It takes about 2.5, 3 weeks to go through a stock from its rough stage, whether that's new and raw or used and needing refinished. But once we get to the end, it's going to look really nice. So I'm going to again stop talking and get to sanding. One of the things you saw me doing, you may have seen me doing, was slowly working this area here. This area has 2 flats on it. One flat that's parallel with the rest of the top of the stock, and then an angle on the side here. I like to preserve that. I think it gives it a little bit of flair, especially right as the cartridge is ejected. But anyway, let's get to some sanding and see what we can do here. Alright, here we are after a fairly complete wet sand. There are a couple areas that I could go at a little bit more aggressively. There were a couple of places that I did go at more aggressively. And right now, I think that we are in a good place. This little finger hole is always such a toughie to get right. Because when you put your finger in there, you want it to be smooth. You don't want it to feel gritty or rough. Kind of like it does from the factory, but we don't talk about that. Okay, this to me looks like it's ready for another coat. So let me get the water cleaned up here and get ready to put another coat on. Okay, I am standing now, and I don't normally do this kind of work at this angle, but we're going to give it a shot and see what we do. So I've got some of my finish that is filled with several herbs and spices, and I've been really happy with the way that it comes out. I've done a lot of work on a lot of cars over the years, and I've been able to incorporate some of those products with the traditional gun products, and I think things come out pretty good. So what we're going to do is, it's as simple as putting some of that stuff on and taking a microfiber cloth and rubbing it on. And going from the flat sanded finish to getting some of the actual finish on it just looks and feels great. Now this, I will end up taking strokes with the grain at the end. I may swirl a little bit to fill some of the voids, but in general we want to go with the grain. And it doesn't take a lot. If you take a lot, you get runs and drips, and then there's more to sand, and you end up chasing that dragon. So it's easier to just resign yourself to say, it's going to be coat after coat after coat. But know that at the end, it'll be really, really nice. I mean, I say that Ruger should be making this gun, but realistically, this would cost way too much for them to do this, have it done by hand, without an industrial sprayer just blasting some finish on it and calling it good. It'd have a good finish, of course, but it's not the same. And it's not a stock that's been around for, what, over 40 years, if not more. Every once in a while, every few coats, I will put a little bit of finish in the checkering. You don't want to put too much because that tends to fill in the checkering, and that defeats the purpose of the checkering. But with good lighting, it's very easy to see and know what has been covered, what needs to be covered, and any places that need to be touched up. Again, I really like the top of these stocks, how we have the flat from the back to the front, and I try to preserve that as much as possible. There, it was a little dry. We need more there. Most of the time, getting to this point, has the stocks not taking very much of the finish to get a coat on. And that's the case here. So we're not going heavy, just putting on a little bit at a time. I'm going to get too close to the camera, I apologize for that, but it's what we got to do to make it happen right. Going to put a good bit there so that it runs a little bit. I'm going to try and catch it and move it down to the bottom here. It looks like we did that. This area, typically one of my favorite parts of the stock, because you can get ridiculously good reflections out of the ends, because the end grain fills and finishes and just builds. I'm going to switch my handhold here. and get the last little bit. I didn't do this exactly the way I wanted to, because if you saw me coming down this way, I ran into some snag areas where this part that I've already addressed has tacked off a little bit. So we're just going to add a little bit there, and that is about one more coat. Now you can see some of this is flashed off already. It's going to take about an hour and a half for it to be dry to the touch, and about 3 hours for it to be able to be given another coat, and about a day and a half between coats, or after the last coat, to do a wet sand. So it's going to take a little bit of time, but we're going to end up with a very nice 1022 with the new features, but the traditional and hand finished walnut stock, and I think it'll look pretty snazzy. So until next time, I will give you some updates, and see you in the next one.